Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another edition of Transcendent. We call this broadcast Transcendent because of the definition of the word transcendent. It means to go beyond normal boundaries. So we take the issues of the day and do our best to put them in the context of God's word and interpret as believers and as people of faith, even as people who you may not go to the visible church, as we call it, but there is something of a universal truth that resides in you that deals with moral decency and time-tested principles that have structured a culture that has become enviable on the planet among the nations for the last 240 plus years. And you know that those things should not be abandoned, that there are some things that should be abandoned, and there are other things that need necessarily to be carried forward so that the culture can not only survive, but thrive. We are in a threat as to whether or not it will even survive. And that threat is real. And therefore, we are taking some action, nonviolent direct action, to make sure that the dream for tonight's broadcast, that the dream that Dr. King had, surely a prophet of our time, does not die on the vine, nor is it abandoned, and the principles of it, the true heart of it, sapped out of it, and something else fed to the culture that is actually destructive in nature. And so I have two guests tonight. You'll meet them momentarily, but I want you to take opportunity tonight to get settled in. If you know how to share this on your social media platform without losing us, I tried to do it one time and I lost everything. So I'm above 55. That's my get out of jail free ticket. So if you are able to share it on your social media platforms, by all means do. And tonight you also need to mark your calendar for January the 17th, which is MLK Day, and we'll tell you exactly how. And not only the 17th, but there are events already going on, and you will hear from Shakari Nakapodia today from the 13th through the 30th of the month. Things are happening. So I'm grateful that you're with us tonight. Let me get right into these guests because we have a lot to cover, and we want to cover as much of that as possible. My first guest tonight is Otis Thompson. I met Otis through, my father's name is Otis, by the way, so I have an affinity for the Otises of the world. I met him through a mutual friend, Alice Patterson, when we were at the Claude Black Center. We were putting on a debate on the platforms of the Democratic and Republican Party. We were willing to go to history because history certainly in the Black community favors one party over the next, and it's not the party that it has embraced. But we couldn't get anybody, it couldn't get any takers. So we had it anyway, and I met our first guest, Otis Thompson, briefly through Alice in that. And then when the MLK Commission canceled the march, in my heart, I just knew that it should not be canceled. Now, they have a right, obviously, to do whatever they feel like they do, and there's no negative shine on them for doing what they felt was right. But they are not the master of MLK. They're not the master of the march. They don't own it. We don't need permission from the MLK Commission to do a march.
Amen.
And in my heart, I just felt like we didn't need to let this lay at this critical time in our culture. We needed to revive, renew, reinvigorate that dream. So I have with me tonight Otis Thompson. Otis, thanks for being on with me tonight.
Thank you very much.
You are not a Johnny-come-lately to the MLK march. You were among the first, I understand, on the MLK Commission and the fundraising side of that.
That's correct.
That's something very interesting the other day when we were talking about this concerning the march. You said in the first march there were more police officers than there were marchers.
Something like that.
Take a little time and tell us who are not versed in the beginning of the march how all that went.
Well, I can remember standing in front of Martin Luther King Park, where the march starts.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, there were more police officers there than there were people at that particular time,
Mm-hmm.
in the 80s. And you didn't think very much of it at the time, but Lord, give it 30 years.
Yeah.
Give it a generation.
Mm-hmm.
And it has grown from a handful of people to now over 300,000 people participate in that march annually.
It's the largest MLK march in the country.
In the country. And we're blessed because of that. We're blessed for, I don't know, you look at God sometimes, you ask the question, well, why are you in San Antonio, and
Mm-hmm.
why on this occasion, and so on and so forth. And it is amazing about all of those who have gone before us.
Yeah.
Reverend,
particularly considering, Otis, that San Antonio is only 6.7%.
Only 6.7%.
It's
amazing. God's hand is in this.
Yes.
God's hand, and it crosses all races, all creeds, all nationalities,
mm-hmm.
all persuasions. And I have witnessed this over the years. Yes, I am the first fundraising committee chairman, or was the first fundraising committee chairman of the MLK Commission.
So you have that distinction in history where the MLK March is concerned here in San Antonio. You're the first fundraising chairman.
That's correct. Of course, I would say that we had some issues back in the day, like you have with all organizations at one time or another. I felt I had a vision that the march should be reversed, that we were marching the wrong direction. And I was willing to put my position on the line for that, so I resigned. I went through a number of council people, through a number of ML Commission chairs, and brought this up to them repeatedly over the last 20, 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them budged, city council people, etc. Well, God's hand has moved once again, and in a mighty way. So he brought to my attention the route from Lincoln Park to MLK Park.
Man, Otis, I could not get over the common sense notion. Now, in doing the site survey today, I understand why someone who anticipates that kind of crowd size would choose the route, because the street's broader, the shot is kind of straighter, mm-hmm. and at the end, Pittman Sullivan Park is spacious. Mm-hmm. So I get the logistics. Mm-hmm. But the symbolism involved in the route that you laid before us just a couple of days ago, SABWB was going to do the march anyway. Mm-hmm. But when I heard what is typified by the symbolism of starting at Lincoln Park, Abraham Lincoln, and moving to MLK Park, this is actually the trail of history.
Absolutely.
The Emancipation Proclamation took place in 1863. And then almost 100 years later, 1964, 101 years later, we have the landmark civil rights legislation. So the two starting and ending places make perfect sense. There's some logistical challenges that we'll have to overcome on Monday, but we're moving from the proclamation at Lincoln Park, and we're advancing toward the dream in a literal sense, that we're advancing toward MLK and the legislation. Now it's up to us to do the last rhyming word is manifestation.
Amen.
It's time for us to manifest
Amen.
what those that have gone before us have paid such a price for. Take the next few minutes, Otis, and tell the people what you want them to do on Monday. And I'll, at the end of the broadcast tonight, I'll give them some details, but speak out of your heart to those who are listening today. And perhaps finally, you can talk to this too, because I've been to the marches. In fact, the gentleman that as our second guest tonight, Shakari, I knew his sister long before I knew him. His sister is a powerful woman of God, a pastor in the city, Pastor Shatigo. And I knew her long before I knew him. But I heard of him from Pastor Jeff Harris over at Grace Point Church, and I heard of him from Pastor Ed Newton at Community Bible, and they knew that there was an assignment on Show's life. Show's what they call him for short, and I'm so thankful that he's on the broadcast tonight. But I wanted you to take opportunity right here before I go to him and tell people what do you want them to experience on Monday?
Well, it all begins with common sense. I guess I could put it that way. When you speak to anyone in the march and you say to them, don't you see that we're marching the wrong direction? The reply is, so you know what, you're right. I had never thought about that. And this is because it was never brought before the public, before the masses. It was never mentioned at the MLK Commission part of the meetings. It was never part of the city council discussion or any such thing. There's a reason for that, because we know who runs this city. And as long as we continue down this road with this regime, I'm afraid that the Martin Luther King March will be destroyed. We have to get back to it before it's too late. We cannot allow COVID, this threat, this fear that we have, this unreasonable fear that we have over COVID, to stop us from living our lives and fulfilling our legacy as far as the city of San Antonio and this nation is concerned. So this coming Monday, I'm asking everyone who is viewing this video, this conference, this meeting that we have, to come out and to participate in this march, walk. It's the first of its kind. It's the first annual march that we will have. We're looking to have it from this day forward. We will be doing and fulfilling what God, if you just open your eyes, you can see it. Mm-hmm. Does it not make all the sense in the world? Does this not make God's sense? It makes God's sense. So be prepared on Thursday not to let Dr. King's dream die, not to let his legacy
on Monday, yes,
die on Monday. And that's all. That's about all I say to it at this time.
All right. Thank you so much, Otis, for being here. And I want to thank you before I dismiss you from the program tonight. You, by the way, you are free to stay on. I'm gonna bring Shakari on, but if you want to stay and listen in the green room, you can do that. So I want to thank you for your tenacity, for your biting down on something and refusing to let go until some change took place. And I think you're an inspiration to people who feel like they may be laboring in the dark and laboring out of a good conscience that they can answer their own good conscience and not thinking that anything would come of it. but you've labored for 25 years.
Something like that, absolutely. Every bit
My
of
Lord.
it.
You know,
Every bit.
Abraham waited on his promise in the Bible for 25 years. He got the promise at 75. He received it at 100.
I'm in good company.
Yeah. Yes, you are. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And we will see you on Monday. Lord
See
willing.
you on Monday.
All right.
See you on Monday.
All right, Shakari.
How do we get to this green?
Hello,
room
my
or
name is
something?
Natalie
You wanna
Hardy
hear
from
what they say?
SABWB, San Antonio in black,
You know
white,
what
and
they say,
brown.
sister?
Every Friday
The
morning
green
at 10
room.
a.m., we are at this table seeking the face of God on behalf of our city. And if you didn't know that, I wanted you to know so that you can tune in with us and pray with us, whether we do it on that same time or after the fact, and look at a broadcast and pray with us after the fact. Every voice counts. So join with us on Friday mornings, and we look forward to praying with you. Bless you. Bye-bye.
All right. We're about to get into the second half and the bigger half of our program tonight because Shakari is in the house. I'm thankful for the grace of God on your live show and to be able to just kind of talk some of this stuff through with you, really out here where we have never privately had the depth of discussion that we are probably going to have at this time on this broadcast. But I want you to be candid and open and honest, and because I think that that's what Dream Week is all about. You're trying to create the platforms and trying to create and cause the conversations that broaden our perspective on things and give us the impetus to work together to see the kind of change that we want to see, as opposed to retreating to our own respective corners, gloved up and ready to fight. That we would be a people who would do the opposite and fight together rather than fighting each other for what we want to see happen in the culture. If I put some words in your mouth with all of that or misinterpreted any of it, now you got enough time to straighten that all out. So.
No, that's fantastic. What I enjoy is obviously if we had a back and forth, because I enjoy your perspective as well, and you know it just helps to stimulate things. There's so much to say, and you know, I'd rather just have a conversation if that's possible.
Sure, absolutely. Tell us about your organization and the purpose behind these 200 events and 150 partners, and where did that come from?
Yes, so I'd like to first of all just thank Otis Thompson and for all the work you did. I think everyone responsible for creating this wonderful match that has become this incredible asset to the city is worthy of applause. So,
Yes.
you know, thank you very much. It just takes that kind of faith, but I think ultimately we have to recognize that the individuals who were doing it then were not doing it because they wanted to have 300,000 people march. They were doing it because they believed individually that was the right thing to do, and it didn't matter how many. And somehow, you know, they say success has what? Many friends. So they brought a whole bunch of us along. So I was very fortunate in my, you know, when I arrived here, I was working, I had a advertising agency called the Mighty Group. And when I arrived in San Antonio, it was called the Mighty.
It's pretty evident that you're not from these parts.
Yes.
Your accent totally gives you away. So tell us about where you have come from.
So I was born in Lagos, Nigeria.
Okay.
And like a lot of Nigerians, you know, my generation, we wanted to travel abroad and learn more about the culture. I mean, as a colonized nation, you typically you look at the colonizers and you think about living in that world as maybe some way to advance oneself. So we all, some of them with means or not, but Nigeria had a little bit of money at the time, and we ended up in England as students. And but I always wanted to be in America. Cosby Show, Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, Pastor Flowers, all these individuals made me really, fancy coming to America. So I wanted to come here, and I wanted to live in America, and I wanted to experience America for some time and then go back home. So, it's a long story from that. But the process it's quite, I lived in Lagos, which is a large city. I've lived in London extensively now. And I went to university in a place called Leeds, which is about 200 miles from London. I lived in New York when I first arrived. I wanted to be a writer, so I lived there for many, many years. But all these cities had something in common. They were pretty much, I wouldn't use the word completed, but there was a set, there was a kind of a rigidity about those environments that you knew that you'll have to break some things down to get yourself to be part of the structure.
Mm-hmm.
San Antonio, when I came to visit my sister, wasn't like that. It presented more of I wouldn't use the word a blank canvas, but it kind of had some possibilities,
That's
open
interesting.
to it. I saw it as New York or Brooklyn, where I'd lived, and when I went to Brooklyn, I went, wow, I wish I'd arrived here, a few years ahead of time. San Antonio was that Brooklyn for me, where I could breathe and maybe practice my art and just grow. Mm-hmm. And I think that people, when you travel quite a bit, you realize, I'm sure, Pastor, this is something that you probably feel as well, that in the end, you can be anywhere, So this is my New York, this is my London, this is my Lagos. And when I first arrived there, one of the big questions people asked was, why are you here? And that was the surprise, because I'd never been anywhere in the world where anybody would ask that question, why are you here? And so that surprised me. And so I started a newsletter when I first arrived here, about the first year or two, called B1604. It was after an Ellington song about black, brown, and beige. And 1604 then was this vast circular place that I didn't think would ever get through. Yes. And I wanted to describe all the wonderful things that I saw that could happen within that loop. And unlike New York or London or Lagos, these things were accessible. I could talk to the mayor if I wanted to, maybe a few calls. You could watch a Spurs game. I never went to Madison Square Garden to watch the Knicks. I couldn't afford it. And maybe I can afford it now, but even then it'd still be a strain. But I know that I can walk down the street right now and go and see the Spurs play, right? And so there were those kind of things, the restaurants where you can go, you meet, you're not just having a table at the restaurant, you actually know the restaurant owner, because yes, it could be your neighbor. So this was the first sense of community that I had, where you could touch things. You could, you were not just this passenger that was just getting carried around, right? Yeah. There are a lot of people, I lived in New York, so I know that. There are a lot of people who live in New York who feed the system. I call them like the fuel, but they're not the vehicle. They're not the drivers. They certainly do not even have a clue what the destination is. And they're just part of that.
Feeding the machine.
Machine, yeah. And not really. And, they get burnt out and they leave. And so I have people who live in New York that I know, that I live with that, and they're quite content with that. But this was literally a fresh
breath of fresh air.
A breath of fresh air for me. When I started to work as the Mighty Group, I came in here, I thought, well, I don't really know anyone, so this is going to be a mighty leap of faith for me to start living in an environment and starting an agency here. So I call this the Mighty Leap. and it was a advertising agency, and people would ask why the story. So in the end, I just called it the Mighty Group. I changed the name, and that's why it became the Mighty Group, right?
Wow.
And so we worked with, first year, made, I think it was probably about $28,000 or something like that. I mean, literally getting almost kicked out of apartment complexes here.
Mm-hmm.
And every year it grew and grew and grew. And at one point, I remember distinctly that we had, $1 million. And I just remember coming to America with now $50 in my pocket, $50.
You came in with $50.
Yeah. It took me $40 to get the cab from JFK to my friend's place. So I ended up walking up the stairs with $10. So,
let me ask you a question right here. I'm going to ask you a sociological question, which you may not have an answer to, but I think it's worth at least fielding the question. You came into the country with $50 in your pocket.
Yes.
And some years later and some moves later, you have an established building that has gained a collective income of $1 million. And there are people born in this country, born as poor as you were, or maybe even poorer than you were in Nigeria. And they are not moving. They are still even generationally tied to assistance programs. Why is that? Why does an outsider's perspective, even on the city of San Antonio, you saw the city as a place upon which you could put your mark and you could grow and you could integrate into the fabric of the community and make the kind of change that you felt like you wanted to make or were called to make. But the people right here are generational occupants of housing units that are victimized by crime and drugs and all of that. What happened to us?
Well, I mean,
I know it's a big question. I remember
the first time I heard you speak, and we were both working on the same side of not working on a political campaign, but we were basically supporters of a certain candidate here years ago. And that was the very first time. I just, in a little crowd, I was, I think, the only person who wasn't necessarily a pastor of a church in that place. And I heard you, and I remember saying, wow, I love that man's voice specifically. I just love the way that man sounds. So for people like me, and I have to say this now, my peers are doing, I think my peers are doing infinitely better than I am. That's how I see it. I have a lot of wealthy friends in San Antonio, whether it's the doctors or lawyers or, pharmacists. My friends in Nigeria are governors of the state or have run for the president of the country. So, I mean, San Antonio here it's not a big deal. You have to be very clear.
Keep your humble.
Yeah, they're running for president of the country, and I'm here, setting up. It's not a big deal. But the thing, and I bring that up, the things that appeal to me and attract me are very different from what appeals to them and attracts them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm attracted to people who can make sense of this world. And that's why when I met you, you sounded like, and still do, as an individual that I need to listen to. That I'm always drawn by that, right? I was drawn by this idea of America being a place where I'll give you this. I'll just say this quickly, and my friends laugh at this, and my family too. But my sister will tell you the same story. When I was very young, I always used to tell my father, "I want to be a Negro," because of the wonderful music and the sight of the civil rights movement. I wanted that was what I wanted to be. I wanted to be part of those people. They were so beautiful. They were so
That's funny.
yeah, I know. And he would laugh at me. He would just laugh. He said, you don't. No, you don't. He would say, no, you don't. So I ended up in England, and I was fortunate. I studied civil engineering. I mean, they paid for good schools.
Yes.
So we're talking about an environment where I was the only Black individual in those environments. But you're growing up in that, you don't really think about yourself as privileged because that's all you know.
Yes.
That's all you know. And so there's a difference between how you were brought up and how you bring up your children and how your grandparents brought up your parents. Things completely evolve. My great grandparents or grandparents didn't read or write, but my father did, and here I am. I'm kind of computer literate, and so there's kind of this evolution that we're part of. So I don't know if it's always a very I don't like the question of necessarily making that comparison, because we have so much capital put into us at a very young age. I had been to boarding schools from when I was 10 years old. So in my generation, all my class, I was actually 9, get bundled up, sent away to boarding school. You're there, about 500 other boys, all the way from 9, 10, all the way to about 16 or 17. The 17-year-olds to us then, looked like I was looking at you gentlemen. They looked ancient to me as a 9-year-old. They were like gods to us. And so you live through understanding that they're wiser people, they're stronger people, you kind of figure out your place in a boarding school. If I had enough resources, I would have a boarding school in San Antonio for African Americans.
Because of the impact that it made upon your own life.
It would completely change everything. Completely. Just putting them together.
I'm going to go to commercial. And then when we come back, because this story, I mean, I could talk to you for hours. I could listen to your story for hours, literally.
You shouldn't have asked that question.
No, it's a good question, because I wanted people, this is not just where we want to disseminate information. Yeah. We want to emanate. We want to impart things into people's lives, which means that in many ways, they have to have some context for that. We're going to go to commercial. And when I come back, I'm going to ask you to take us from all of that seed thought that you came into the city with and how it birthed into giving birth to Dream Week. We'll be right back after this commercial. Hello, everyone. I'm Charles Flowers, your host for Transcendent. Transcendent is SABWB's online weekly broadcast aired here on Influence's platform. Join me and other key leaders from various pillars of influence which shape the culture of San Antonio for innovative and strategic dialogue. Each week, we will address core community values and principles that need to be restored and re-implemented into our culture of our great city. This may often necessitate identifying where these values and principles are being compromised and reflecting on the damaging impact that such actions may have if left unaddressed. But ultimately, we want to take the conversation beyond ordinary limits, exceed the normative boundaries, and implement bold, time-tested principles across the pillars of influence in our city, which will result in the positive transformation of the culture. I look forward to visiting with you each week here on Transcendent. And I'm so grateful that you're here tonight with us, with Sha'Carri. If you missed it, you can always go back to our YouTube page or to our website at sabwb.org And I'll tell you more about that at the end, particularly because I have some information to give you concerning the march that is very important for you this coming Monday, January the 17th. But it's not just a march. There is a whole host of activity. The march is on the flyer, as you see on the screen. It's going to be 10 a.m. and begin at the Lincoln Park. And we will move from Lincoln Park down Commerce to Houston and turn right there at the great Bethany Baptist Church. Pastor Ronald Benson is the pastor there. And we'll go down to MLK Park. Did you know that that park is 543 acres? I learned that from Otis. It's 543 acres, and I only was used to viewing the park from the MLK Drive side, and look back in there, and it looked like 20 or 30 or 40, maybe 50 acres. It's 543 acres because it goes all the way from Martin Luther King Drive all the way through to Houston Street. And so we're going to make that turn there at Bethany Baptist and go down to the Wheatley High Sports Complex and have our ending ceremonies there. They're going to be life-transforming times. I talked with Pastor Otis Mitchell today. Pastor Mitchell pastors the great Mount Zion Baptist Church, where Dr. Claude Black pastored before he left here and went to glory. Pastor Mitchell recites many of Dr. King's speeches. And he's going to recite the full speech of I Have a Dream speech at our ending ceremonies. I've never heard him do it, but I've heard of what an excellent job he does with it. So I'm waiting with bated breath to hear the reenactment of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech on the grounds of the Wheatley Heights Sports Complex on Monday, January the 17th. Those activities should start to take place around 12:30. We're going to leave. It's a 2-mile walk, so it's not that far. But we anticipate having a number of people, so it will probably take, if we walk 2 miles an hour, it will take an hour to make the march. 2 miles an hour is a modestly slow pace, but when you have a bunch of people, that time can be increased. So we're going to give ourselves 2 hours to finish up, and then we'll start our activities at the MLK Park at the Wheatley High Sports Complex that afternoon at 12:30-ish, 1 o'clock. And then you'll have an opportunity to hear Pastor Otis Mitchell do that. But it's not just the march. It is a whole dream week that we're already in the middle of. So Shakari, if you will, tell us about the activities associated with that and how people can get involved. First of all, how did you grab a hold of that? And then how people can get involved with what's happening Dream Week. I think you're muted. Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
So starting off, arriving here, and just to close out the last question, I think there is genius in the African American struggle, and I try to tie it all in is what my appeal is, what kind of led me to come to this environment, because I always felt that the African American spirit was I was just drawn to it. Mm-hmm. And that sense of overcoming, the sense of being forgive, the idea that they embodied this idea of the notion of forgiveness fully. And when I mean forgiveness, it doesn't mean there's no bitterness, there's no distrust and stuff, but ultimately that path says, no matter what you do, we believe that our tomorrow is going to be better than our yesterday.
I'm telling you that if there is a master key to releasing the potential that is in the African American culture,
yes.
If there is a master key, I have a dear friend, Pastor Isaac Petrie. He is in Texarkana. He makes this point poignantly. It is not until we as a people, and I want you to feel that out a little bit, and not until we as a people can come to the place where we forgive.
Yes.
Because forgiveness releases all of the bitterness, and it releases the burden that comes with that bitterness, the oppressive burden, and frees us to be a people that can then start to live out the potential that's on the inside of us. Until then, it is an imprisoned capacity because it's kept behind this thing called bitterness and anger. And there is so much of that that is being provoked, even played with in the culture, agitated in the culture. And it only works to keep us more and more depressed. Please speak your mind concerning that.
Yes, and to me, forgiveness, and this is what I feel the African American, this is what I feel the genius is that the forgiveness is me reaching out to you with full confidence that whatever has happened, that I would overcome. And that overcoming is something that can be taught to everyone. It's not something, and that's what the genius is. It's a template that it can be used in any situation.
Yes.
Look at what we've gone through. We didn't have an opportunity to just quit. We had to stay. We had to endure.
Mm-hmm.
We still get derailed because guess what? Shokari Nakpodia comes and starts Dream Week, and they ask us why we didn't do it. But without us, he wouldn't have even had that notion.
Yes.
It wouldn't happen. So while we read about Mandela and read about Kenyatta or Nkrumah, all these African leaders, we were taught about MLK. We were taught about Malcolm X, Baldwin. I came here and I was shocked at how much more I knew about African American jazz music, African American music, African American literature than here. So I think it's always a mistake to think that somebody's over there. We may have had a broader understanding of this culture, or at least in terms of literacy of this culture, than folks who are here.
Yes. Now,
and so
I would have to.
That's very important. If I've read all Baldwin, I've listened to Ellington, I know Miles Davis albums.
Yes.
This is the African American culture.
Because they were not just producing music, they were producing music in the midst of tremendous restrictions in their time.
Yes.
And the music contained a message, which they delivered with savvy. They were not brash and ugly and brutal in their language, nor bitter. But what we hear in some music in the African American culture is all of the anger that's stored up. That key about forgiveness is huge.
Huge.
And if we can provoke that in the Dream Week activities, is that part of what your objective is?
Yes. Pastor, in Nigeria, I used to visit a little cafe that would play a song, and I would walk up to the owner. I said, "What's that song playing?" He will say, "Who's that artist?" He will say, "Well, Pharaoh Sanders or something." Who's that artist? Every time, I forget who's that artist. And I finally arrived in New York, and years later now, I was a kid when I would listen to this, and I had the same song, Goosebumps. I was so, when you just have this huge, just incredible. It was kind of very humbling and shocking, but at the same time, kind of inspiring as well. I just had this song that I had repeatedly that I really loved.
Yes.
And I went into this and I said, who is this? What's the name of the song? Guess what it's called? The Creator Has a Master Plan. This is me in New York, all broken, just arrived there, struggling. And it was a sound that I loved in Nigeria. I heard it. It was almost like saying, you've arrived.
Yes.
Got you.
Yes.
The Creator has a master plan.
Yes.
And that's all it is. That it just keeps repeating that refrain, right? The Creator has a master plan, peace and happiness for all mankind. So I've come from this thing where every herald, every alarm basically says, show your job is to unite, to learn more. And my sister is in the other side, and she's coming up and praying for me. And you know my sister, once she prays for you, the confidence that gives you, right? You feel that you can conquer anything, and she just dismisses any kind of hardship. And so when we arrived here and got all these things started, I thought, well, we have this largest march in the nation. What else? What about people who don't really want to march, but they have their hearts in the right places? What else is out there that we're dismissing? Who else is going through a similar experience as the African American individually and trying to overcome something? What is their own story? Who are the new MLKs of today? The 12-year-old, child is, who are these geniuses in our midst that we haven't given a platform because we're looking at the ivory towers or maybe the pulpits, but they actually exist in there. Where's the civil rights movement protest and fight going to take place now? Because it's no longer the street. It's changed. How can we create a platform where we celebrate what I think the inspiration is ultimately, or what our legacy of the civil rights movement truly is I can fight you on the streets, or we can sit across the table.
Yes. Yes.
Sitting across the table, my job is to tell you, look, I'm using your language to tell you that you're wrong. I'm not trying to yell over MLK and the entire group. We're using what was established laws and basically making those determinations and trying to convince them. So we believe the truest voice is always going to triumph. Why don't you let everyone speak?
Yes. Yes. Well, the reasons for not letting everyone speak is because there is a desire for some to not let others triumph. If they spoke, they would. So you snuff their voices to keep them from finding this new vista on life and pursuing it, because it might actually work for them. And then we have no population to class as the poor that need to be rescued, or that the strong hand of government or a people group needs to reach in and show mercy and lift them up and become their caretakers, so to speak, while those who are being taken care of become their slaves. And so there is this attempt to snuff voices. Dream Week is about lifting those voices.
Yes.
Where and how can they get involved in Dream Week?
You go to dreamweek.org, dreamweek.org, and we have about 200 events taking place. Obviously, because of these the COVID situation we find ourselves in, a few of them have been postponed or just canceled. But we started off with about 230. And so even if we settle down with about 190, ultimately it's still a lot of events.
Yes.
And it ranges from, a church on the east side that is welcoming drivers to pick up 50 to 25 plates of food, drive around the city and feed the hungry, not the homeless, the hungry, because they
Mhm.
exist. There are people in homes who
Right.
are hungry. And, individuals who are basically two wonderful brothers, African-American young men who are doing exceptionally well, who have challenged the entire city to do 1 million push-ups, and everyone counts. Those are the kind of things we're talking about here, where your one push-up
Counts and into the total of
counts
the 11. Okay.
into 1 million.
Into the
It's
total
very
of the
important.
million. Yeah.
We have all of those, right? We have a speaker series, and we have a panel discussion. Thank you, Pastor. I know you're going to be part of, which is going to discuss the future of faith. What does faith mean nowadays? What
Mhm.
does that even mean in terms of how we view? There's so much information being accessible, whether it's Instagram or social media, where
Yeah.
there are little sound bites of faith. Do this and that happens.
Yes.
Do that. Does that change what you do on a Sunday? Is there a replacement for that? Is there church every moment now for us?
Mhm.
Can we have our church whenever we feel like, as opposed to have a
That day of the week.
congregation?
Yeah.
So these are kind of conversations we have. One of the things that you brought up, and I like to just touch on this quickly, is this idea of the foundational African American.
Mhm.
It's something that is being brought about basically, and it comes up from the discussion about reparation, where there's a distinction being made about the African American and the African or immigrant or black.
Yes. Mhm.
Like me, where Obama and Kamala are put in that position, saying, well, their parents were immigrants and they're not really from the foundational African American root. Why should we put check boxes and saying blacks are doing so much better when it's the immigrants that are actually doing better, that the African Americans are not being given that? It's almost like we're doing the fights and we're struggling, and these individuals that come in and fine, they're getting some rewards from it, but it's diluting the concentrated reward we would have received for all our fights. You can't make an argument against that. I think that's something that needs to be discussed. But African scholars will tell you too that the idea of blackness should not belong to the African American struggle.
Right.
That being black is broader than being an African American. Right. And being colonized, that the individuals who founded African American founding fathers were not slaves here, but slaves from the west coast of Africa in large part, and they were enslaved there. And the impact of that enslavement, we forget that they had brothers and sisters and fathers and that they left behind. The trauma of that experience for those families that were completely decimated it's an issue as well. So those are the kind of things that will bring about, gun control, issues of abortion, all of that. Can we have strong discussions about it where our youth can, be flies on the wall and learn to be able to articulate their positions and not necessarily stray towards violence, but more importantly, create language that may move us forward and peacefully as a community.
I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it happening. I want everybody to go to dreamweek.org. Look at the list of activities that you can become involved in. If some of it, I would do a listening tour if I were you. I would go to these events and I would just listen. Anatomically, we get a message from our Creator with 2 ears and 1 mouth, that He wants us to listen twice as much as we talk. Those who listen seek to understand. Those who talk seek to be understood. Seek to understand before you seek to be understood. because what you understand will tailor what comes out of your mouth. In fact, it will eliminate perhaps a lot of what would come out of your mouth without understanding. Do yourself a favor and do a listening tour through Dream Week. Look at the events. Don't go with a judgmental attitude. Go with a learner's attitude. Go with a listener's attitude. And it may be in the midst of that something will be formulated in your own heart that can connect with others, and you'll find the great blessing and the great seed of blessing that is in your own heart. Shikari, thank you. Thank you so much for.
Thank you. I couldn't have put it any better, Pastor. You just said it exactly. It's my favorite time of the year because I learn so much, and we can't be everyone. We only have a very small perspective, and I always tease my sister. I said, heaven is going to be literally us listening to everyone's life story, every single one of us. We have to sit down and watch this movie of everyone's life. Yes. And that would be heaven. And to me, that would be heaven because I would enjoy that.
Yes.
But I thank you so much for having me on here.
Blessings to you. Blessings, blessings, blessings. All right, folks, you heard it here first on Transcendent. Please do that. Please go to dreamweek.org, get a list of events that are happening around the city, and go on a listening tour. Put your ear to the chest of others and listen to their heartbeat. It might be that when you come away from it, the truth that you know can be tailored and delivered in such a way that it speaks to where that person is or where they have come from, or perhaps even help them get to where they want to go. And you can be a blessing in the lives of others. Of course, the most important thing in anybody's life is that they have three things intact: a sense of origin, where they have come from, a sense of authority, what they're authorized on earth to do, and a sense of destiny, where they're going, because you won't live forever. And origin and authority and destiny, those three keys help you not waste a whole lot of time, because it is in measured portion to each of us every day. Nobody gets more than 60 seconds to a minute. No one gets more than 60 minutes to an hour. No more than 24 hours to a day, 168 hours to a week. We're all apportioned the same. And having that time as the great equalizer, let's use it to the best of our ability to deliver this something that God has in our hearts, that is to bring revelation of who he is to the world and cause us to be a blessing to our fellow man as well. All right, so here I'm going to give you some information now because we're running out of time right at the door. I want to tell you about the march. You can join the march just by meeting us on January 17th at 10 a.m. at Lincoln Park. Lincoln Park, the Barbara Jordan Center, Claude Black Center, and Lincoln Park are all co-located there at 2915 East Commerce. 2915 East Commerce. If you get there and the parking is all stacked up, just about 3 or 4 blocks down the road is St. Philip's College. You would be traveling west on East Commerce. Buses will be there to move you from that parking lot down to the starting place. And we'll begin our opening ceremonies at 10 o'clock there at the initial place. And by 10:30, we're going to be on the road, marching toward the dream, marching from proclamation to legislation, down Commerce to Houston, crossing under I-10, turning there at the Bethany Baptist and going right down to the Wheatley Heights complex. And when we get there, I usually walk this walk with my friend. He's a dear man to me, Pastor Ed Newton at Community Bible Church. He's going to be out of town that weekend, away preaching. But I sent him all the data for the CBCers for you to don your T-shirt or hoodie and join us in this march. If you're tired of being shoved and pushed around, politely lied to, locked down, locked out, managed, if there's something inside of you that says you want to live again, you want to love again, you want to struggle together, you want to win together, if there's something in you that's ready to do that, then January 17th at Lincoln Park is the place for you. Wear your walking shoes. Pastor Matthew Hagee, Cornerstone Church, has lent his full support of Cornerstone Church for this march. They'll be busing people in to this march. So I want you to be a part of this progression from proclamation to legislation. And I want you to commit yourself to the next leg, which is manifestation. We have to manifest the things that these people have given their lives for and create in San Antonio the blessed community. You're going to hear me talk a lot about the blessed community over that weekend. So I can't wait to have your participation with us there. Become an SABWB partner as well. You can go to our website at sabwb.org and give there. Or on the screen just a few moments ago, you also saw a place where you could donate. You can donate 5 ways. You can go to the website and donate there by Planning Center. You can write us a check. You can write that to 8023 Vantage Drive, Suite 313. You can find us on Venmo at sabwb.org. You can find us on Cash App at $sabwb.org. You can text to give. Text your amount, choose to the number 84321, choose SABWB as your point of giving, and anytime you want to, you can text an amount and give that way. So I'm so thankful for that. On the screen, you see Dream Week has a QR code. You can put your phone over that QR code and get all of those activities that'll be taking place between January 13th and 30th. Get it, put your phone over it, get your listening tour all lined out, and then get on some good, comfortable clothes and do your listening tour right here in the city of San Antonio. All right. Much blessings to you. I look forward to seeing all of you at Lincoln Park on Monday, January 17th at 10 a.m. Love you big. See you next week. Bye-bye now.